What's up, y'all? It's poppin'. It's D. About to react to this vid by Hello Yassine. It's titled "Why Hip Hop Is Dead Right Now." Damn. I mean, I definitely noticed a shift. You know, people are becoming more interested in other genres more and more. Myself included. I have been listening to a lot more Afro beats, but not more than rap. I've been listening to more Afro beats, but rap is still the number one genre that I turn to, especially when I'm working out. So I don't feel like it's dead per se, but I do feel like the interest is dwindling for sure. But let's hear his take and hear what he has to say. Let's watch.
What's popping, y'all? Has anyone else felt within the past, I would say 4 months, if not up to 8-9 months, it feels like hip hop has kind of been dead. And I think we're at a point where people really aren't caring as much as they used to. I sent out a couple of tweets where I said the following. It feels like nobody cares about music like they did in 20.
I feel like we've had some good moments, though. We've had artists who have released stuff that we've been really excited about. Like Travis just released, and that was, really exciting. Which, there's only a few songs on that album that I really like, though. I mean, I can recognize that it sounds good, but as far as it having a lot of replay value, I only go back to, 3 songs. That's the song with Drake, of course, the song with Playboi Carti, and there's one other one. So maybe I need to give it another listen. But I've already listened to it a few times, and it's just most of them I'm like, okay, this is decent, but I don't want to keep hearing it over and over again. But we still were excited about it, and I feel like it did really well. Gunna's album, we were excited about. But yeah, I guess, the excitement is not where it used to be. But I feel like that's also because a lot of artists aren't really dropping like that. As much as we would like. Where is... I feel like Drake needs to drop something else. It's about that time. Well, he did just drop a 21 not so long ago. But he needs to drop a solo album. And I feel like that would increase the excitement, maybe. But yeah, I guess he's right.
When I say music, I'm pretty much exclusively referring to hip hop. Even if an album is amazing, sells well, everything, it has a span of maybe 10 days. It feels like the level of excitement.
We're excited and then we're over it.
Deflated. And then I followed it up by saying Trippie Redd posted a huge announcement of him apologizing to his girlfriend for cheating in the lead up to his album dropping. He drops the album, and I haven't seen a single person talk about it.
He dropped an album?
And then someone replied and said, but what was the last album that was amazing and sold well?
Shit, I fuck with Trippie.
Utopia was an amazing follow-up to Astroworld. Great rollout, great music, great performance and concept behind it.
But
bringing
we're
Ye
not...
out. Everything was picture perfect. But how many people are still talking about Utopia right now? And that wasn't even, 2 weeks ago? And people are just already kind of on to the next thing. And the reason why I brought Trippie Redd up, this was before I even saw the projections for Trippie Redd's sales, which is 20-something K? I don't know if it's 28K.
That's not good.
20-something K. This is a Love Letter to You 5. This is his staple series that's supposed to be selling the most, as opposed to if it had a different title or a different album title, and it's not doing hot. So what's going on within hip hop? I don't think that's the complete answer. I'm going to give a bunch of different takes that I have. Another tweet that I sent out was in response to ESTG walking out on No Jumper while he was on the Bootleg Kev podcast. Pretty much Bootleg Kev just asked him about his history as a football player, and ESTG didn't seem to like that and kind of pressed forward asking some questions of where did you find that information, what video did you watch, and then Bootleg kept trying to change the topic and ESTG just walked out. Now keep in mind I don't have the context of how the interview was going before this, but Bootleg Kev did say ESTG was 2 hours late. Regardless, I quote tweeted this and I said, another example of why hip hop is dying. Acting, quote, too cool when I've never heard a single person say, I can't wait for the next ESTG interview. This is, I have a lot of stuff to cover. So let's first knock out the hip hop is dead thing or hip hop is dying. I feel like people don't care. And this is also a good thing, which is why I want you guys to kind of watch till the end. Because I'm not saying this as a bad thing entirely. Although it is kind of a bit hard.
Maybe it'll push them to step that shit up. Because, overall, rap is less interesting, okay? And even when people are dropping shit, I'm not, mind blown by anything.
Breaking to see what community is there, what hub is there, what groups are there right now that are popping, buzzing. Ice Spice is the hottest and most popular thing to come out and the freshest thing to come out in the past year, and her music is lackluster. she's not great. And that just goes to show you that's the best we've
And that's
had.
no shade to her. It's just
Clearly,
a fucking
it's
fact.
not looking too. Ice Spice and Sexy Red. That's what we've got. We can't even name any male rappers. Well, BLP Kosher is one. He's hard, but he's not even really mainstream like Sexy Red and Ice Spice are. He's not getting the looks that they're getting yet. So 2 female rappers are number 1 right now, or the hottest that have come out in the past year, and they're both who they are, not great. And that doesn't mean that hip-hop is dead just because of that, but it's the level of excitement. Think about it. When was the last time you got excited for an album? And I'm not judging by numbers at all. People are saying, oh, there hasn't been a number 1 song yet from a hip-hop artist or a hip-hop song.
Because Travis' album is doing great, I'm
this
sure.
video out of a judgment of analytics, which is somewhat out of the norm, considering I like to use numbers a lot, and I do think they tell the story. But for this, it's more of a vibes thing, right? Or like a feels thing, and I want to get a gauge of what everyone else is feeling, and then we can extrapolate on the state of hip-hop. It's either I'm not paying attention as much, or people don't care as much. And I'm more inclined to think it's the latter, because Trippie Redd's album, what was the last album you thought, yo, I have to listen to that? And it's kind of like what I talked about with Travis Scott's Utopia. That lasted 2 weeks, and it was a great album. Some people are saying it sucks, but like, yo, come on. That was one of the biggest things to happen this year. What other album is huge that will last for a while? It doesn't feel like hip-hop is a thing. It just feels fractured. So a bunch of different artists all doing their own thing. For example, like ESTG. This guy's walking out of an interview. This guy's lost the plot. Who cares about ESTG? Like, the guy makes some good music. But if I turn on ESTG's new album, when he wants to talk about music, right? This is the argument that people say, yo, these artists, they come on there to talk about music. People don't care to hear you talk about the music, for the most part. If they wanted to hear you talk about the music, they'd listen to the music. They want to hear you. Who are you as a person? Who are you as a character? What are your experiences like? What has your life been like? They want to know what's behind the music, not the music itself. How is someone going to talk to you for an hour? How is Bootleg Kev going to talk to ESTG for an hour about his music? He's going to say, oh, hey, on track 3, that sounds exactly like track 2, which sounds exactly like track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on your last project, which sounds the same thing as the project before that. Yeah, that one, when you talk about Selling Fent, which you did on the past 3 projects as well, in every single song, is that something that you actually did? And now he's going to say, oh, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Are you police? So you can't even ask questions about the lyrics of the music, because the lyrical content of the music is him talking about crimes in this particular case. So you can't talk about the lyrics. What are you going to say? Hey, man, where'd you get your beats? Was that honorable C note on that beat? Yeah, that was cool. How'd you put that together? I'm not watching that. Are you watching that? That interview is going to get 10,000 views. No one cares to watch that. So he's trying to make things interesting, and he's not even putting ESTG in a spot where he's putting out information that's, number 1, not real, or number 2, embarrassing. People think it's cool that he used to play football, but he's just acting like this too cool for school mentality, when you can do that if you have hits. ESTG does not have a hit. What is the last ESTG hit you heard? All his music sounds the same. Now, it is pretty good, but it's pretty good all the time. It's not hit worthy. He sounds just like 5 to 8 other artists that you can put into a cluster. If you listen to any of their music, you know exactly what you're getting when you press play. You're not surprised in the slightest. You're not pleasantly surprised. You're also not negatively surprised. Yeah. You know what you're going to get. It's consistent. It's like McDonald's. Consistently boring. McDonald's is great, depending on the location. So I guess it's not as consistent. Regardless, you guys get my point. ESTG is consistent. He's a boring character. His music is more interesting than him, which is a better place to be than a Coi Leray, for instance, who does have a smash hit, a bigger hit than ESTG has ever had. But we're not going to knock Coi Leray in this video. Yeah, so it's just this guy who's mid in popularity as an artist. Like if someone says, yo, who are the top 25 artists in hip-hop right now? Nobody's naming ESTG. Not a single person. Yet he acts like this. And this could be partially to blame for his management, etc. He could just not show up. He has the option to do that. But I think walking out is disrespectful. Keep in mind, I didn't have the whole context of everything, but he could just say, hey, man, I'm not interested in this. The guy's acting too cool. Like, yo, you're not Travis Scott, okay? So why would hip-hop dying be a good thing? Like I said, to quickly recap, I think it's dying because nobody cares about anything anymore. There's no community. Like, for example, in the past several years, there was that next-gen SoundCloud, new generation SoundCloud that people focused on. I didn't care about them too much, but they had a liveliness to them. Now, a lot of those guys are their careers are dead. A lot of those 16 to 19-year-olds that blew up and everyone thought they were hot in 2021, 2022, those guys are 2021 probably. Those guys are nowhere to be found this year. Just a couple have blown up since then. It's kind of like everyone's in their own faction. Like Opium Crew is the only one that's an actual maybe collective that's new that people care about. But that's not hip hop. Hip hop is like, yo, we've got a bunch of these mainstream guys. And this circles back to the second point, which is why it's good. And I'll get into why it's good in a moment. People are saying, hey, there's plenty of great artists out there. You just need to find them. Okay, that doesn't mean hip hop isn't dead if there's good music. If something is dead, that means the popularity, the interest, and the level of commitment of the fans to the genre is high.
Exactly.
Good music can be a component of those three criteria.
That's how I feel about R&B as well. You know, whenever I say that, people are like, well, you gotta look for the artists. There are some good R&B artists. That's not the point. The point is that overall, there's not much excitement or interest in the genre within itself. Not nearly as much as it used to be. I feel like R&B is doing way worse than even hip-hop.
But it can exist without.
People really don't give a fuck about that.
So there can be 1,000 great artists.
But yeah, it doesn't mean there aren't any good R&B artists.
You know, in their own little world, then that doesn't make hip hop as a whole big. So why is this a good thing? This is a good thing because now there's none of that pressure to listen to what's popular because nothing is really popular. Or you're not missing out on something if it's popular. Like, you're not embarrassed if you didn't listen to the new Sexy Red song. But like a couple of years ago, right? Or even just a year or two ago, there's this pressure that we all have as hip-hop listeners, which is, you got to keep up. So you got to keep up. Did you listen to this new album? Did you listen to this new album? This album by, I don't know, let's say Drake just dropped, Kanye just dropped. You want to listen to these guys, which takes away from the time you have to explore artists that are relatively undiscovered. And that's a good thing because that keeps hip-hop popping when everyone feels like, yo, these are the mandatory listens. We got to listen to them or we're not really following hip-hop. And for that to be a thing, there has to be a mainstream because there has to be enough of a collective that everyone says, yo, these are the guys and girls that you have to check out their stuff and we can talk about it and other people will chime in because there's enough people paying attention to it. If it's just small artists and there's 200, let's just say there's 300 small artists that are pretty good and everyone is listening to a different artist or the majority of people, it's fractured, it's split, and there's no greater discussions that everyone can come to as a whole. But this is liberating because now you're like, hey, I can just check some random artist stuff out and if I like them, I'll just listen to them because I don't have to pay attention to mainstream hip-hop because it's pretty much dead right now. And this allows for a pocket for many,
I've never felt pressure to listen to what other people listen
to build out their own wave. And that doesn't mean they're going to become mainstream, but the attention has kind of been cracked now. Or it's been, what's the word for it? It's been fractured, disintegrated, like split into many pieces equally. And I know I'm missing the word for that. Someone with some good vocab, drop it down in there because it's at the tip of my tongue, but I'm not going to hold you guys any longer. So there's so much attention that's been split now that can allow for a lot of other artists to gain some popularity. So I think that's one positive thing, is that people will, while hip-hop is dead, people will listen to a bunch of artists that they just authentically want to listen to with no pressure, with no expectation of their numbers, because we don't really care about numbers as much anymore. The genre, that's also something that is important. I don't really care about album sales like that. Like, for example, like Gunna and Young Thug, that was like a cool thing because it was a little rivalry, and Travis Scott, because that was a very big drop after Astroworld. But for the majority of artists, like for mid-tier artists, do we really care about their numbers? Like Coi Leray, we kind of have a history of looking at her numbers and her level of popularity, but DDG, like, do I care what DDG sells? If he sells 4K, okay. If he sells 20K, really good for him. I don't even know if he dropped his album. But like those middle-tier artists, we don't really care like we used to a year ago, or pay attention to.
I think we're working out.
You know, he's kind of underreported too. For example, Trippie Redd sales, I know them because I saw them on my feed, but that was the first thing I saw about his album. And that's something that's missing too, is a lot of these discussions that used to happen around an artist's album. And I don't know if it's the lack of marketing dollars spent or whatever the case may be, but Lil Durk, for instance, he dropped that Almost Healed album. Does it feel like Lil Durk dropped this year? It doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like, oh wait, Lil Durk dropped? So a lot of things just don't feel right. It's ironic because this is also a 50th anniversary of hip-hop, but it just doesn't feel the same. And I know I'm not the only one experiencing this, but this can be great because it's a new beginning, and a lot of other artists can get their own chance to not shine, but have their own level of popularity with their own set fan base. And it kind of democratizes everything, as opposed to everything being centralized as it once was. And labels were talking about this. I don't know if it was with Ice Spice, but I saw this one headline where they said, hey, labels don't even know how to predict or make an artist pop anymore. It's kind of all just luck, and they just are catching up to other artists after they already blow up. And isn't that what everyone's always wanted? Some people are saying, oh no, they have to change it up, and they have to, you know, get some good A&Ring and find some good music instead of focusing on analytics. Well, I thought you guys didn't want labels to have as much power on who you're listening to.
But sometimes they do place industry plans
success?
I do
Wouldn't
believe
you rather
that.
just have the artist
And
blow
it
up
works.
first, and then you can find the artists that you
But
like,
sometimes
know
it don't
that
work.
they weren't pushed on you by a label, and then once they're popular, they have a signed to a label and have the label assist them in getting to the next level of popularity. That's pretty much the ideal, but yet everyone is kind of blaming labels for this. I don't think there's any fault of hip hop quote dying that should be attributed to record labels, because they've been operating with the same interests since the beginning. Yet things were hot at one point, and now things aren't as hot. But there's got to be something there. Also, the lack of tours selling for a lot of these artists. Overall, I think this is a great thing. I hope to see a lot more new artists come into the game. And yeah, probably going to check out a couple of new guys this week. Just scroll through, see whatever music pops up.
As you should, because I feel like we're at this point where you gotta really, really dig for good music now. Before, I feel like it was easily accessible and we were really excited about, artists dropping. But yeah, that excitement is just, it's no longer there. And I mentioned that, maybe Drake needs to drop. But honestly, if he drops an album, unless he does something like crazy over the top, like super mind blowing, which he hasn't done in a very long time, I still think people just wouldn't really care that much. They would talk about it and probably make jokes and memes about, some of his lines or how he's sassy for like a couple weeks. And then it's like, all right, we're moving on. We forgot about it, So it's really a interesting time when an artist as big as Travis Scott can drop. And like he said, after a couple weeks, we're just like, anyway, moving on. Like nobody is even really talking about it anymore. Like there's not much hype or interest surrounding these drops. What we really need is Cardi and Nicki to drop like on the same day and to be going in at each other. To be going in on each other. That would be everything. We need that for the culture. That would create so much buzz, so much excitement, especially because Nicki ain't dropped in a long time and then Cardi ain't dropped in forever. So that would be dope. That's what we need. They could single-handedly, well, it's two of them, but whatever, you get the fuck I mean. They could really inject a lot of interest in the hip hop community if they did that. I really, really want that. Anyway, I agree with a lot of what he said though. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Let me know what other videos you want to watch and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.